Good evening, or morning, or whatever time of the day it happens to be. Welcome one, welcome all to the Writer's Black Podcast. My name is Greg Nikus, and I'm getting some seasonal whiplash today. We had snow 2 days ago, and now it is 70 degrees, and I'm being cooked alive by my furnace, which refuses to turn off, and I refuse to go into the basement to turn it off manually. So we'll see who blinks first, furnace. We'll see who blinks first. This week on the podcast, I'm sitting down with writer, director, and YouTuber Stuart Hardy, aka Stu Bagful, to talk about how he uses writing to cope with sadness and other big emotions, maintaining his unique voice in the digital space after more than a decade, his philosophy for distributing projects across different platforms, and so much more. If you're enjoying the Writer's Black Podcast, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or our YouTube channel. You can also follow along with us over on social media. We are at Writers Black Pod on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to go the extra mile and help us keep the lights on, you can do that by heading over to our Patreon. That is patreon.com/writersblackpod, where you can get our episodes one whole day early in both video and audio format. All right, housekeeping out of the way, let's get into today's conversation with Stuart Hardy. Back in 2022, you and YouTuber JXE prepared for the Doctor Who episode Power of the Doctor by writing your own version of the story, and you seem to have predicted quite a bit of everything that happened. My question is, how did you obtain your psychic powers, and do you have tonight's lottery numbers?
Well, it's because when you've watched so much of, specifically in this case, Chris Chibnall's writing history, I'd been through the entirety of all of his episodes of Doctor Who, Torchwood, and I'd also watched some of his earlier stuff and watched interviews. So I kind of got a feel for who he is as a person, and also got a feel for what sort of direction he was going in with Power of the Doctor. So it's like, okay, I think he's going to go there, and there, and yeah, as turned out, we were largely right in that regard.
These days, you wear a lot of different hats: writer, director, YouTube personality. When you meet someone new, how do you introduce yourself at this stage in your career? And is there one of those labels you feel more comfortable with than others?
Well, you've heard my stuff. You have heard this sort of roundabout way that I describe myself. The way that I introduce myself to people is typically YouTuber, because that is what people know me as. But I will sarcastically refer to myself as just writer person.
Who are some of your influences, I guess, early on with your writing style and your writing career?
Well, I can just rattle some names off the top of my head. That would be quite easy to do. Robert Shearman, who I was aware of him through his Doctor Who work, obviously, his Big Finish audio plays, his episode of the new series. But I started exploring his short story collections off the back of being a big fan of those things. And when I started reading, because his short story collections are obviously quite personal and big on theme. So when I started reading his stories, I didn't know that you could write. I'd never read something like that before. Specifically, there's a story in his short story collection, Love Songs for the Shy and Cynical, which is about a man who falls in love with a woman who is allergic to his own happiness. So every time that he's happy, she starts sneezing and her eyes are streaming. And things get quite dark from there, because in order to remain in a relationship with this woman, he has to be miserable. I'd never read a story that made me feel like that. Off the back of reading that, my approach to my own short stories was sort of processing how I'm feeling about certain topics by way of a short story. Because the first short story that I wrote after a massive dry spell after university, it was 2014. I recently had moved out, and in the process of moving out, my girlfriend had accidentally thrown away a stuffed giraffe, which her mother had got for me at one point. And I have this thing where I should have given it up years ago. I had this thing where, if you ever seen Toy Story, this idea in your head that the toys come alive and start talking to each other, and they're friends when you're out of the room. So I got sad about that. On the way to work, recently our printer had broken and we got a new printer. So sort of those two events just sort of collided in my head. I got to work and I immediately sat down and started writing a story set in a world where office appliances talk to you, and it's a way to like sell products to consumers. And it's about a guy who's talking to his printer, which is broken. They need a new one, and it's saying, "Please don't get rid of me. Please, I'll print. I promise I will." You know, it was comforting to me. It made me feel better. And that's basically how I write short stories and what I write them for. It's a way of processing my own emotions and reflecting on the things that have happened to me.
I forgot about the printer story. I had to get a new car around the time I heard that the very first time, and I had a very similar set of emotions with the car. Like, hold on, no, wait, I can do more. I can carry
It's
you
just this
farther.
moment of devastation. I often think to myself as if inanimate objects are alive, and I feel sorry for them. So then I translate that into a story, and it makes me feel better, and that's why I write stories. I don't really write them for any reason other than to try and make myself feel better.
So you've been on YouTube for how long now?
Oh God,
I think
I've stopped
13 years, I
counting.
think. Okay.
I've stopped counting. About
Okay.
13 years, something like that.
Okay. So you started off doing these out of context reviews, and you've built on
This
that.
takes me back.
You've built on that. You've had your writing styles changed and it's evolved quite a bit since those early days. Your sense of humor, your tone, and just your top of the line illustrations. It all
Thank you.
feels. You're welcome. They're very good. They make me feel emotions in here. But it all still feels very uniquely you after all of this time, where other people in similar positions maybe pivot more to appeal mainstream and lose some of that authenticity. Has it ever been a struggle for you to kind of keep your style for your videos and your writing and all that jazz?
Well, I have sort of pivoted in the last couple of years towards trying to figure out what hits in the algorithm because I had a random hit. I was basically just continuing on for the longest time, just doing exactly what I had always done, just whatever feels right. And then in late 2022, I had a massive hit with a video essay that I made about friends, which started getting a lot of attention. So then I thought to myself, okay, what elements can I isolate? How can I drive that growth forward? So I started experimenting. Some of those experiments worked, some of them didn't. But the point is, I wasn't experimenting for the sake of getting my channel up. I was experimenting for the sake of I'm finding this fun. When I'm creating things, it is sort of like I'm doing jigsaw puzzles. It's sort of like how do I put this bit in there, this bit in there, okay, that bit in there, that bit in there, that bit in there, and just this became my fascination for the last few years or so. But it hasn't changed so much in the sense it hasn't. I am still me. I'm still doing what feels right, but at the same time, I'm now focused on I am focused on these experiments to see what works and what doesn't. I have kept this idea of what feels right because if I just got into into the sense of what's gonna make people click, what's gonna make as many people watching this as possible, I wouldn't enjoy it. And ultimately, if you're not enjoying something, people can tell. Like there's so many YouTube videos that I watch these days, not naming specific names, but I watch them. I just think you're clearly not enjoying this. You're clearly doing this just to get the hits. And I get it. You're in this position where you've got lots of people watching you now, but at the same time, it's completely obvious, and that's why I tune out.
You've taken on a lot of different creative projects. One of my favorite being your series reviewing Brexit as if it were a TV show. Uh, what pushed
Coming
you?
back to the politics.
That was genius.
Thank you.
What pushed you to expand onto other platforms, like shifting out from YouTube to publish your writing or to work on your Abnormal Stories podcast for Spotify?
Well, the pandemic was a huge part of that. And Brexit as well. As I was saying with the printer story, it's events in my own life that forced me to start venturing outside of where I am to see where my writing fits. I've issued like physical publishing. I've played with the idea of self-publishing a collection of short stories, or maybe finding a small press that would take them at some point. But when I've got an idea that I want to express in that moment, I need to find a way to express it in that moment because otherwise it's going to be gone and I'm suddenly not going to care about it anymore. Like the first Brexit video that I made was 2019, I think it was now. And it was spurred on by I listened to a speech by Prime Minister at the time, Theresa May, in which she trying to put myself back in that place. But basically, she was going after the Labour Party at the time for saying that if the Brexit deal was bad, that they would vote it down, and she was saying that they're bad for doing that. And I just got so angry because obviously all of the promises that were made before the Brexit vote were not going to be delivered. So then the idea of review Brexit as if it is just a television show that clicked into place, and I needed to get it out there as soon as possible. So YouTube was there. So that's the format that I put it out as.
How do you decide kind of where each project goes? Because sometimes you'll do your illustrations with your stories and put them on YouTube. Sometimes they're just up on a website people to read. Sometimes they go into your podcast. How do you decide what fits best where?
A lot of it is based on feelings in trying to imagine the visuals because I have this very distinct visual style, as you identified. For example, one of my short stories that I put out, which you mentioned in the email that you sent to me first, Merry Easter. I immediately knew that that would be suited to my cartoon style because it's a very cartoony idea. It's a story set in a world in which Easter and Christmas have swapped places and people wear little plastic crowns of thorns. That's a very cartoony idea. Whereas a story that I did on my Abnormal Stories podcast about a man who's just gone through a messy breakup, who tries nude sunbathing in the garden for the first time. And then when he's sunbathing in the garden, a guy falls out of a plane just that's flying overhead and smacks into the pavement next to him and just covers him head to toe in blood. That wouldn't work at all as one of my cartoon videos because I won't spoil the ending, but it's incredibly graphic. So I think that would only work as an audio piece or a print piece.
What does writing fiction for abnormal stories give you that film and video don't?
Well, there is something quite intimate about sitting down with a microphone and just reading a piece of fiction that you've written for the specific purpose of processing some emotions. For example, the first episode of the recent series of Abnormal Stories, Sudden Death, about a man who, about 10% of the population of Earth just drops dead for one day for no reason. And it just happens to be this man's wife, and it's about him waiting for an ambulance to arrive and sort of processing. Wait, this is just a film, isn't this? Is just like a film, isn't it? She's going to come back to life, and it's going to be the end of the story, and going through the stages of grief. I wrote that just after my cat died, and I was feeling, very, obviously very sad. You will be sad after your cat died, but I needed to process it in some form. So that was why I wrote it. And there was something, as I said, it's making myself feel better. I'm telling myself this story in order to get through these emotions myself, in order to make myself feel better. So the man goes through these stages of grief and gets to the end of the story, and he's processed it, and he's accepted it, and he's crying over his wife who's died. So it's, as I said, it's telling myself this story to make myself feel better.
How do you avoid burnout as someone trying to promote across all the different platforms? And you obviously you've been directing more and you've been writing more and you have other like adult responsibilities. What is like how do you manage that?
That took a long time to figure out. A very, very long time. I initially started all of this stuff after I got out of university, where I was just sort of like desperately, I want to write, I want to find out how to get my stuff out there as fast as possible. So I did as much as I possibly could, and I did hit burnout around. I was in my biggest hole of mental health in about 2017, I think. And I did start slowing down quite a lot. It just got to a point where I had to say to myself, if you don't feel like doing something, don't do it. There's this meme that goes around on lots of writers forums and Facebook groups that I'm a member of that just goes, "You should be writing," and it's a picture of someone looking very stern because lots of creative types, we do procrastinate, we do put off doing things. I will go and clean the entire house rather than sit down and write the idea that I want to. So I have to stop myself and think, if I don't want to write something, why don't I want to write it? Because it's not ready yet.
And for me, like that's part of the reason I started doing the podcast is because for my own version of burnout, for my own procrastination issues, I've been working on a novel for 6 years now that I just keep spinning in circles on, and I'll get 200 pages in, and I'll go, this is no good, and I'll throw it away, and I'll get overwhelmed, and then I won't touch a keyboard or a notepad for forever. So I'd rather do anything else than what I want to be doing in that moment.
Yeah, I've been there. Trust me, I have been there. I've thrown away quite a lot over the years.
You have a real talent for writing that can get under people's skin. And in my opinion, some of the best horror or some of the best comedy, they come from real emotions and real insecurities. Is that always something that you're consciously exploring in your work? Or is it a theme that you kind of notice once the projects are finished?
Yeah, it's more once the projects are finished, really, because I'm not specifically writing in order to scare people. And I think that's what gets under people's skin a bit more because Merry Easter, for example, that you've mentioned before, the set in the world where Easter and Christmas are swapped places. I didn't write that to scare anyone. I wrote that specifically because it's based on the last weekend that I saw my granddad before he died. It's just processing those emotions and trying to put myself back in that place where I was a kid. I didn't really understand what death meant. So it's trying to put the reader in that place where they can view death again from the perspective of a child who doesn't really understand what that means with this surreal lens over the top of it.
What has been the biggest learning curve for you now that you've kind of been making the jump to directing more?
Um, that's a big one. Yes, the biggest learning curve on that one is I have to say specific things in order to try and convince people to do this. Because I'm a very antisocial person. I will sit in my little bubble inside my room and I will write my things, I will make my videos and my podcasts and things. And it's taken a long time for me to realize that, people actually watch my stuff and do like me and want to help me. So gaining the confidence to venture out of that circle, and the pandemic also I mentioned earlier was a, was a big part of that. As sort of me realizing that wait, I have isolated myself. I can get other people involved in what I'm doing. I don't have to be the be all and end all of that. Especially working with my editor Roman Weston on that film. When he was putting the shots together, I realized that some of the shots that I had in mind didn't really work, but he took other shots that we had taken and put it into that context. And I realized that the way that I saw this working probably wasn't the best form for that project. That is the big learning curve, realizing that other people's perspectives are probably just as valid as yours.
Your award-winning short film, The Voice, it is this wonderfully claustrophobic piece about the nature of intrusive thoughts. Translating it from script to screen, how important was that collaboration just as a whole? And like, what size of a team were you working on to make that project
Oh,
come to life?
there was only about 6 or 7 of us. It was a student film made as a result of a short course I did just after the pandemic, and it was quite a difficult process of isolating which bits of it I could put on the screen and which bits I couldn't, because there were lots of ideas that I couldn't put on screen. For example, there was a scene that I wanted to do which involved him thinking these thoughts about a child that he saw in the park, but obviously filming with children, that's quite difficult because you've got the child to think about, the child's parents to think about. So obviously I have to bin that and just use the bits of the story that I can physically do. And a lot of my recent mode of trying to figure out how to translate my works into film is based on me limiting where my imagination goes and thinking, okay, what can I actually physically do to achieve a film? Like Got Your Nose, my second short film that I made recently, was very much based on, okay, smallest amount of things that I could need for this would be a room, 2 actors talking about this idea that I've had.
You got to direct a comedy sketch for Ask, Seek, Knock with Katie Manning and Susan Twist. What was that like for you? How did that happen?
Okay, so the journey of that one comes from a guy called Luke Allen who had been watching my YouTube channel since he was 12. He basically over the course of a few years had asked me for a line or a cameo or something here and there, and he has slowly built up his own production company, and he had this idea to make a proof of concept sketch show pilot with loads of different directors, loads of different actors and actresses that he has managed to convince, because this is what I was saying about me being this isolated, antisocial person sitting up in my room. Luke is not like that whatsoever. He will just email anyone and ask anyone for anything. And sometimes they say yes. I was one of those people that said yes, and so was Susan Twist and Katie Manning somehow. So we all end up converging on this weird little shop about 40 minutes away from where I work to make this sketch on I think it was a Sunday in 2024. You'll see it eventually. I think they're still editing it at the moment. It was the most surreal weekend of my life.
I can imagine. You've talked a lot recently about some more negative trends that you're seeing in film and TV today, whether it's the second screen viewing phenomenon, the ongoing series not evolving for the times issues, or networks being afraid to take risks. In your opinion, how do we start to fix these issues?
Well, definitely regulation with regard to AI. That's a big one. Because as I mentioned I assume that you're referring to a recent video I did about Stranger Things, in which I talk about how it feels like an AI recap of the show rather than the show itself. Creatives like the Duffer Brothers are quite obviously very aware of online fandoms of their work. Like you watch the documentary they make about the making of season 5. They look terrified. They look absolutely
Yeah.
terrified about the fact that millions of people are looking at them for a satisfying ending to this show. And I just sort of realized watching that if they didn't have millions of people looking at them and they weren't being given millions of dollars by a massive production company, there would not be 5 seasons of Stranger Things. There'll be three at most. I think the route back to it is creatives just sort of realizing that we need to tell the stories that we tell, and if there's money in it, then great. If there isn't, then we don't. This
Yeah.
leads me back to me saying that if you're cleaning the house instead of sitting down and writing the idea, there's probably a reason for that
Yeah.
because there isn't enough of it in there yet.
What is a question that you always want someone to ask you about your work that no one ever does?
I suppose the question that I want people to ask me is so that then I can explain why is why do you not really want to follow the traditional model of book, television show, movie, something like that? Why are you doing just this random scattergun style YouTube? Here's a short story here. Here's a podcast. Here's this. Here's that. Because I feel that's the good thing about the internet. There's bad things about the internet and good things about the internet. The good thing about the internet is that you can just create these little platforms for yourself if you want to. That can be a bad thing, of course. That can lead to, say, as I mentioned, creatives in the industry like the Duffer Brothers who are valuing people's opinion much more than their own artistic vision for the work. But you can just create these little platforms to yourself. There's nothing stopping someone out there who wants to either make a film, write something, put out a YouTube video or something like that. There's nothing stopping you from doing what you want. The only thing that is stopping you from doing what you want is your thought that people won't like it or it won't catch on. Sure, maybe people won't like it, maybe it won't catch on, but if you want to do it, you should do it. And if you don't, then don't. Clean the house instead.
Maybe not what's next for you, but are there any projects that you have coming up or things that maybe you want to try to push for this year?
Well, I'm very, very close to finishing the biggest video essay project that I've ever done. Spoiler, I don't know whether I will have released it by the time that this goes out. The biggest project that I have ever done, it is an analysis of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, in which I go through the entire thing, break down all of the arcs, and I've discovered something interesting about it. And in watching it, I think people would really complain quite a lot about Buffy if it was released these days because I've looked at the reaction to Stranger Things where people complain that it's a bit more like a soap opera these days, where people make these big speeches about how amazing and important the characters are. That was Buffy to a T. Buffy
Mm.
was much more of a soap opera than it was this because people love and cherish Buffy. They think it lives in this little nostalgia little bubble inside of their heads. But I watch it these days and there is a lot of similarity between Buffy and modern streaming phenomena like Stranger Things. But once that's done, I have another short film project which I would like to get started on. I don't know how I'm going to do it, as it's much more ambitious than anything that I've done before visually. This is leads back to what I was saying about how to put myself inside the box and think of what I can actually achieve. Okay, I'll pitch it. Okay, I'll pitch it to you. Okay. So it's called Kaylee's Charger is Missing. It's about this woman who shows up to her office one day, realizes that shit, my charger's not in my bag. She searches around her desk. She can't find her phone charger. Her boss comes over and says, something the matter. She goes, just like white face, I can't find my phone charger. Her boss just goes, are you serious? And so then it cuts, and every single person in the office is just looking for their phone charger, just tearing their hair out, just like, oh my God, I can't find her phone charger. And then everything stops in the entire world. Every single person in the street is just out looking for her phone charger in bins. Flights are grounded. Operations can't happen because all the doctors are out just looking for her phone charger. So it's about this idea that we've taken something entirely trivial that people freak out about all the time and just expanded that out into this big anxious stress stream. I want to make it. It's
I
going to be
love that.
difficult. It's
Yeah.
going to be difficult, but I really want to make it.
And maybe if you ask really nicely, Katie Manning and Susan Twist will help you out with it.
Yeah,
That's a really smart idea though.
yeah, or dear Mr. A24, please give me some money to make this to make my stress dream a reality.
To whom it may concern, I have two more questions. One is a question I ask everybody, and then one is specifically tailored to you.
Okay, go for it. I will try and not be as verbose.
We all have these people in our lives that inspire us to do things that we do, whether it's making short stories, whether it is getting out of bed simply just to go walk the dog, or to go to work or do grocery shopping, whatever. Who is that person, I guess, that you're grateful for that inspires you today?
My partner Emily, she's much funnier than me. She's
Oh,
very shy though. She used to make YouTube videos, but she doesn't really want to do it anymore. And just occasionally she'll come out with these ludicrous little suggestions, very reminiscent of what I do these days. Just we're very in tune like that.
and then, so I guess the last question. Your heated feud with Stephen Moffat, former Doctor Who showrunner, has been well documented over the years. I've compiled a list of things that I'd like you to decide if they are bigger than Stephen Moffat's giant brain.
Okay, go on.
All right. Texas.
That's smaller.
The Marianas Trench.
Well, that's longer.
The end credits from your story, end credits.
Oh, those are definitely bigger.
Okay. The combined number of tabs you have open while working.
Bigger.
The combined runtime of every Bond film.
Definitely bigger than those.
The Upside Down.
Smaller, because we don't actually know how big that is.
Jupiter.
Definitely smaller than Jupiter.
Okay. And then lastly, the list of people who have asked you if you're going to continue your 8th Doctor review series.
It's smaller than that. Can I just say for the record, I've never explicitly said I dislike Stephen Moffat or any of the like.
Yeah, just that you think he's in your backyard watching you. Yeah, I know.
Yes, I think he's. Yes, I'm sure he's a lovely person. I'm 100% certain of that.
Well, Stu, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It's been a really fun conversation. Where can people go to find just everything that you're doing?
Just my YouTube channel. I post things there all the time. You can also find me on Blue Sky because I'm not on Twitter anymore.
All right.
Stu Bagfull, STUBAGFUL.
Thank you so much to Stu for being a part of the podcast this week. Guys, please go show him some love by checking out Stu Bagfull over on YouTube, checking out the Abnormal Stories podcast on Spotify, or heading over to his website, stubagfull.com, where you can find links to all of his different projects. You can find links to the short story compilations he's been a part of, everything under the sun. So please, go show him some love. Tell him you said hi. All of you just go say hi right now. Next week on the Writer's Block podcast, I am sitting down with author Deborah Goodrich Royce to talk about her latest thriller novel, Best Boy. Have you ever had trouble writing out those kinds of details? And if not, do you have advice for people who might?
Slow down. That's the advice to people who might, to slow down. Because if you're racing to get to in my case, the mailbox, the letters at the mailbox, and if you're racing to get to the mailbox, you're not going to get everything you can out of the moment. So you have to slow yourself down and revision.
If you're enjoying the Writer's Block podcast, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or even on our YouTube channel. You can also find us over on social media at Writer's Block Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And if you feel like going that extra mile, you can head over to patreon.com/writersblockpod and help us keep the lights on. If you like me, and your results may vary on that one if we're being completely honest, please consider heading over to my YouTube channel at Lego MyGrego TV and just keeping up to date with everything I'm doing over there. I have a few projects this year that I really want to tackle. I want to get back into sketch comedy. I have an idea for a couple different short films, though they might turn into audio projects. I'm not really sure, but I'm trying to be more proactive with updating my YouTube channel and just like making posts and talking about all my projects. So please head over to my YouTube channel that is at Lego MyGrego TV on YouTube, and subscribe to keep up to date with everything that I'm doing over there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. Thank you so much to Stuart Hardy for joining us. Until next time, I've been Greg, you've been awesome, and remember, keep writing.